Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Happy Ever After. Welcome to my Relationship Skills webinar. Tonight, I'm very, very excited to talk about a subject that a lot of people are asking me about all the time, specifically how to know if a relationship that you're in or you're planning to get in is the right one for you. A lot of people have a lot of ideas about love that come from Disney movies, from stories that they've read or been told, from fairy tales in which somehow love conquers all and everything that is needed or anything that is needed is just that you love each other and hope for the best. Now, in my experience as a woman in this world in the 20th century and 21st century, and as a relationship coach, that is not absolutely true. So what I want to talk about today is my specific approach to how I help people figure out what actually constitutes a successful relationship, so that from now on you are able to create the ideal relationship blueprint, which is the plan, if you like, the way that you will determine if a relationship that you're in right now or a relationship that you want to be in the future is actually right for you. Because in order for you to know what makes someone an ideal partner actually requires a little bit of thought and consideration. And I want to give you today a very simple way of determining that. So I'm going to be starting to share my screen. I'm going to show you a few things that I've created for you today. And I would also encourage you to keep your microphones on mute so that we don't get too much noise in the background. But also, if you have questions, you are welcome to use the reactions in the bar at the bottom, or you can use the chat function to ask me questions. Of course, at the end, I will have a Q&A session where I will answer any questions you have about ideal relationships, and we can have a chat. So let's start with determining what does your ideal relationship blueprint look like, or what is important to you in your ideal relationship. So let's start with something that I find is the main reason why people don't actually find what they're looking for. Every time someone comes to me, some of you online are already working with me, so you've been through this experience, while others may at some point decide to try the Happy Ever After approach to better love and relationships. But essentially, the main question I ask someone is, what do you actually want in your life? What does your ideal relationship look like? And most people actually haven't got a very clear picture. Most people cannot really imagine their ideal relationship. Usually we know what we don't want. We know that we don't want someone who's abusive, who's disrespectful, who's not engaged, who's not present, who's not good in bed. But what about those things that are really meaningful and important for us? And the reality is that if we don't know what we're looking for, we're not able to manifest, to create that reality in our life. We're not able to bring that type of person into our life because we don't actually know what we're seeking. So even if we were in an ideal relationship, even if we were to meet the mythical Prince Charming, we actually wouldn't know. So most of the time we actually make a lot of mistakes. We go through life taking the approach that trial and error is the only way to make it work. Whereas actually clarity and understanding exactly what is needed is a much better way. So what I'm planning to do today in this webinar is actually to give you that clarity. I'm going to be introducing a description and a structure for how you can determine what makes an ideal relationship. So for me, relationships are always tension, are always this perfect balance between two different opposing desires that we have. First of all, what we want in a relationship is sameness. We want to find a common ground with a person. We want to find shared interests. We want to be the same. There's a part of us that is looking for similarities in the other person. That's why on a first date, most people would ask questions like, okay, what is your favorite movie? What kind of food? What is your favorite restaurant? What is your favorite travel destination? Because we want to find things in common. We want to build this foundation on something that we both know, we both understand. But then imagine that you were dating yourself. if I know that I would be totally bored if I was dating myself, as much as I love myself, and I think obviously I'm an amazing person. But dating myself, being just with myself, will actually stop me from experiencing parts of myself that I am not aware of. So in my relationships with other people, in our relationship with other people, we discover what we look like, what we are like in certain areas that we haven't maybe experienced before. So what we're actually looking for in another person is what Esther Perel calls the otherness. So the differences, the strange things, the things that we would like to explore. So if you are a very social person, you might actually be weirdly attracted to someone who's a bit of an introvert, someone who's very calm if you're very impatient, because you want to learn from this person how to be more like them. So I would like to go straight into talking about my proprietary structure program that I actually do with a lot of my clients, whether they are single or not single. I actually take people through this particular 4 steps that I'm going to introduce to you right now, because I believe that this is how all successful relationships can be created. So the most important thing in creating anything in life and being successful at that is to have a clear vision, to know what you're looking for, as I said in the beginning. If you don't know what you're looking for, you're going to be so confused about life. You're going to feel lost. You're going to feel disconnected, and you're going to feel like life has no meaning. The moment you actually determine what is your vision, what do you want to achieve, what are the goals that you want to work towards, then life becomes much, much clearer. The second part that is really fundamental in creating a balanced, happy relationship is for you to determine your values. Values are those things that you believe in, those things that make you who you are, that give you a very specific sense of identity that you have created throughout your life. And when these values match those of a potential partner, you know that there is a solid foundation for you to create something together, to build this new edifice, new house of a relationship that you're actually trying to achieve. The third element in the Relationship Success Codex is what I call the happiness recipe. I'm going to talk about it in more detail in a minute, so I'm not going to spoil it by talking too much about it right now. But then the fourth element of this is actually creating an action plan. So because I'm not a therapist, but I'm a coach, what I really focus on is moving people through to action. So it's great that you can talk about your problem. It's great that you can explore issues from the past. But if you don't make a commitment to change things in your life, and if you don't plan how you're going to implement that change, nothing is actually going to shift for you. So I'm going to take you through a very simple 4-step process to create an action plan at the end of this presentation, which you can use at home to do it by yourself. But of course, you can always come to me and I can help you make it even better. So the first thing is about creating a vision. How do we even start? Well, most of the time we have become the person that we are today because we were somewhere in the past and life took us in a certain direction. We had certain experiences. People came into our life and they taught us things. And if we are able to understand where we are now, what is our position, what are the lessons that we can learn from our past, then we have a better ability to project a future that is meaningful and that is positive, that we can work towards. Because in order for manifestation to work, you need to have a clear vision, but you also need to let go of attachments to a certain way that this vision needs to be executed. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But I want to start with the first thing that I work with clients on, which is what are the stories that we tell ourselves. So I talked in my Facebook Live the other day, and in a lot of my public discourses, I talk about the fact that our ideas about love are created through a system of beliefs that actually is based on several myths and misconceptions. The first one is that love conquers all and love is all you need. Well, most of the time, people who've been through toxic relationship or difficult relationship experiences will tell you that love is by far not the only thing that you need, that love actually does not solve all the problems at all. But there are a lot of other ingredients that are necessary for the success of a relationship. So, how are you yourself stopping from making the progress that you want in your relationship? Well, through the things that you believe, through the stories that you tell yourself, essentially you are creating barriers in front of your success. So, a lot of us have certain beliefs about how relationships should be, how we are not good enough, how we don't deserve love, how we are unworthy because we are not rich enough, smart enough, skinny enough, tall enough, how we can't get what we want. This idea that we live as that our perception is based on the scarcity model, which means that we believe that there are no good men out there or good women out there, that you can't you can't create, you can't be vulnerable with the person because they're going to hurt you. It's a whole belief system, it's a whole value system that is actually stopping you. So I would like you to ask yourself, what stories have you been telling yourself about love? What do you feel is unavailable to you? Is self-love missing in your life? Do you feel guilty about anything that you are or that you can be? Is there anything that is stopping you? And what is that specific thing? It's usually something internal. There's very rarely external barriers, but there are a lot of internal barriers that we create. For example, the belief that you are too old for love once you reach the age of, I don't know, 27 or 30 if you're Asian. Of course, you can see evidence around you everywhere that age is by no means a limitation, but your own belief that age is a limitation is a limitation. So if you were to explore the different barriers that you are imposing on your success, what kind of question might you ask for yourself? So I'm going to make a few suggestions on what are the sort of questions that you can ask yourself to create a clear vision for your relationship. And I'm going to start with 3 questions. And first of all is really, what do I really want in my life? What is this ideal life, that the life of my dreams, the relationship of my dreams that I want to have? I love how I have a crocodile there, because I think that you really need to have this drive, this passion. You really need to have a very clear idea of what is it that you're aiming for. Then a lot of the times it's really important to ask yourself, where do I want to be? And by where, I don't mean in Hong Kong, in the US, or I don't mean it in a geographical sense. But if you think that, you know, I'm in my 20s or I'm in my 30s or I'm in my 40s, what kind of life do I want to live? When I say where do I want to be, I mean, where do I want to be in my life? Am I at the point, what is the developmental stage that I'm at right now? Am I at the point where I'm trying to build a family or have children? Or am I at the point where I still want to explore, where I still want to learn about relationships? And so maybe what I need to do is do some recreational dating, which is this casual kind of dating, not necessarily focus on getting someone to marry me tomorrow. And then the question number 3 that you can ask to create a clear vision for your relationship is, what makes me really happy in my life? What are those things that really matter to me? I meet a lot of people in my couples coaching, for example, who tell me, you know, before I got married, I thought all I wanted in life was to get married and to have a child or 2 children. And now that I have all that, I'm thinking, you know, there's got to be more to life. There's got to be more to our existence on this planet. So I would encourage you to think about your contribution that you make to the world. What are those kind of people that you can help? And then you will get a lot more understanding of what makes you really, really happy in your life. The second element, the second area of the Relationship Success Codex that I go into with my clients and with everybody I work with is really understanding of your own personal values. Why are values important? What do they even mean? Most of the time, if we've not actually done any self-development work, we have no idea what our values are. What do we believe in? What are those things that matter to us, that make us who we are? So for a lot of people, love is a big value. I want to give more love in my world. I want to be able to share love from the heart. I'm a relationship coach, a love doctor. So for me, love is a very, very important thing. I want to give it. I want to receive it. I want to be love. I want to be able to share my love with everybody. So it is a very defining aspect of my personality. Another defining aspect of how I want to see life, for example, is the idea of showing gratitude, being thankful for all the things that are present in my life. I'm grateful for my ability to impact people's life. I believe in support. I believe in recognition and appreciation. These three things are very, very important to me in my relationships with others. And they are essentially the pyramid that support my ability to give love to the world. And of course, the foundation of all is respect, mutual respect. If people are not showing me respect, is something that really bothers me. So creating a pyramid of values, creating a list of all the things that matter to you will really help you define yourself, define your ideal relationships, and ultimately the questions that will help you determine your value system is really, what do I really believe in? What's important in my life? So I know that I'm a very independent person, and independence is another guiding principle for me together with love. It's important that I make my own choices. So the way that values contribute to our life is really, it helps us. It's like a compass. It's like a feedback loop that allows you to determine whether you are on the right track. It's actually what creates your ability to decide what's right or wrong. Because our judgment system, the way that we define rational thinking, is based on our belief system, on our values. So I know that something is right if it's aligned with my values, and it's obviously wrong if it's misaligned with my values. So for some people, let's say living with a partner before you're married is wrong, because according to their value system, to the things that they believe in, people should only cohabitate or whatever when they are committed to each other, when they have made a public commitment, which means they got married. That is just a way of seeing the world, but it is a value system. And that way you can make a decision. So how does that fit into having a successful relationship? Well, if my value system overlaps that of my potential partner, I know that we're going to make common decisions, that we're going to be able to have a common vision, and we're going to be able to execute that vision in the same way because we believe in the same things being right or wrong. So ask yourself this question: what do I really believe in? What do I use as the compass that tells me what's right and what's wrong? And then you also need to consider what are the values that you want to share with your partner. It doesn't mean that your entire belief system needs to be completely overlapping that of your partner. But if you have nothing in the middle of these two circles here, if there is no core that connects you together because you believe in the same thing, it's never going to work. So for example, a couple made out of one partner who is very, very independent, who really wants to make their own decisions, who always feels self-centered and like they are in charge of everything in their life, is not going to have a successful relationship with someone who believes in commonality, in making decisions together, in constantly checking for validation with the other partner. This is really going to cause a lot of issues in that relationship, and eventually it can actually destroy it completely because the two partners literally cannot see eye to eye. They do not have the same system of interpreting the world. So shared values, having shared values with the partner allows you to create this foundation of respect, of mutual collaboration, if you like, that is absolutely necessary in creating a powerful connection. So if you have no shared values, and if you don't know what your values are because you've never done it, here is a list. I'm going to publish this video on YouTube anyway, so you can copy it, or you can just message me privately to get a list of these. But if you look at all these, there are a lot of things that are important for a lot of people. However, some will be more important than others. For example, authenticity or adventure. What else do we have? Curiosity, independence, like I said. What else do we have? Understanding or trust or patience or passion or fun, or friendship, or freedom. All of these things, as I look at this list, of course, I'm naturally drawn towards the things that are my own personal values. So the ones that I just quoted are things that speak to me. As you look at this list, you might find that recognition is an important value, that collaboration is an important value, or that creativity is an important value that you want to share with your partner because you want to do things together. Or maybe for you, the most important thing is integrity or kindness or love. Whatever these things are that matter to you, take a look at this list or any list that you can Google, list of values, and actually identify the ones that you believe in, that define you as a person. And then also create a list of all the, let's say, top 5 values that are your core values, the things that are the most important for you, but also the top 5 values that you want to share with your partner. And some of them can be the same, but some of them can be quite different. So I'm going to jump to step number 3 in the Relationship Success Codex, which is what I call the happiness recipe. The happiness recipe is a solution that actually comes from the idea that love is a little bit like baking a cake. Creating the ideal relationship is very, very similar a process to that of baking. So if you were to create your perfect relationship, and it might look like the picture on the screen, what are the ways that you can get it? So for those of you who've never baked anything in your life, it's okay. You don't need to know how to bake, but I'm just going to use this analogy as the simplest way for you to understand what I'm talking about. So the happiness recipe is exactly like baking a cake. So the first thing that I've already talked about when you try to bake a cake is to actually know what it is that you want to achieve. So for example, you may want to bake a carrot cake because it supports your values. You want something that is healthy and yummy and simple and can be really fun. So if your values are simplicity, health and wellness, fun, and enjoyment, pleasure, then baking a carrot cake can be a very, very interesting experience to have. Of course, as I'm talking about baking a cake, I would like you to also think about your ideal relationship. So when you are imagining the perfect cake for yourself from a relationship perspective, you are starting to think of what kind of relationship you want, what sort of model that you are building, what kind of vision that you are building in your head about your ideal relationship. So once you know what you want, once you have a clear vision, and once you understand your values, what is it that actually would make you happy, then you start with obviously choosing the right ingredients. And of course, you might look at different recipes, you might check online, you might figure out what are your existing ingredients at home. So what do you already know about yourself as a person? What can you bring to an ideal relationship? Because we are what we seek. Ideal partnerships are the ones where the two sides are actually bringing very similar things to the table. So choosing the right ingredients for a carrot cake obviously means that you have some cake, you have some eggs, you have some flour, depending on the recipe. But remember that each cake is the one that you make. Even if you follow a recipe from a book, which is actually the social programming that tells us how relationships should be, it doesn't mean that you cannot create your own recipe, that you cannot change some of the ingredients. You don't have to actually always follow someone else's recipe. Ultimately, it's your cake, your life, your relationship. And you are the only one in charge. You know how I talk about being the queen and making choices and making decisions about your life? Well, the kind of relationship that you want is like the kind of cake that you want to bake. It depends on your creativity and what is it that is your final vision. So choosing the right ingredients, I'm going to talk about that in a little bit in terms of relationships, but I want you to remember that, if the relationship requires eggs, you will not be able to get the same kind of cake if you don't have eggs. This is to say that the ingredients that you choose for your perfect relationship are all must-haves. That if one is missing, the cake is not going to be the same. The relationship is not going to meet all these criteria. So when I talk about relationship requirements in a minute, I'm going to understand a little bit more. But remember this picture, and remember that all the ingredients in this picture are actually required to create the cake that I showed you earlier. The second part of baking, of the process of baking, are those things that you can do slightly differently, the things that still need to be there, but where you have a lot more flexibility. So, for example, you could mix a cake with an electric mixer, but you could also mix it with just a whisk. Ultimately, the result is probably going to be the same. You're going to mix the same ingredients, but with slightly different tools, which means that there is a component, this component of building a relationship is actually all the things that you can negotiate around, all the things that have flexibility around them. You could bake this cake in a round pan or in a square pan. It really doesn't ultimately matter. It's up to you to decide what is the shape, what is the size, what is the texture of your ideal relationship. So when you think of preparation, we're going to talk about the second part of this happiness formula, which is your needs. I'm going to explain in a little bit what specifically I mean by that. But just remember that you have a set of things that are absolutely non-negotiable, that are given, which is the ingredients. You have another set, which is the things that are negotiable, where you can have flexibility around. And then you have the decoration. Basically those things that don't really impact the ultimate result, but it impacts the sweetness of life. So you could have a cake that is looking quite basic with not a lot of decoration, which means that you're actually quite happy with a more basic lifestyle. Or you might want all the decoration, the cherry on the cake, all the different things that make your cake look yummy and sweet and fantastic and all that. And there's nothing wrong with either of them, but it's up to you to decide how much fluff, how much bells and whistles do you want to your relationship. And that's something that, again, is very, very personal, and I'm going to talk about it in a minute. So the ingredients, the list of ingredients that I mentioned before are non-negotiable in terms of relationship, is actually called deal breakers or relationship requirements. So as I work with my clients, I help them understand what are those things that they are not willing to negotiate on. And because they have a clear vision, and because they know exactly what sort of relationship they want, what their ideal relationship looks like, then they will be able to identify those things that must be there, that the relationship is actually working properly. So what are requirements? I'm going to talk about the specifics of requirements so that you understand exactly what they mean. And then as a result, you will be able to determine what your own requirements are. So you are able to create these ideal, perfect, unique recipe that you want to have in your relationship. So the most important thing about requirements, like I said, is they are non-negotiable, which means that if one of those ingredients is missing, your ideal relationship is not possible. Let's say that one of your requirements is commitment. If commitment is not present in this relationship, then you are not going to get what you want. Commitment is not something that you can negotiate. You cannot say, okay, we're going to be committed to each other Mondays and Tuesdays, but then the rest of the week we're going to be less committed. It is, the second characteristics of requirements is that they are black and white. They are met or not met. There's not a lot of room for negotiation. It's a kind of hell yes or hell no. Do I feel respected in this relationship? Hell yes, I'm staying. Hell no, I'm getting out. Do I feel I'm not prioritized in this relationship? Well, if being prioritized is a requirement for you, and it is for most people in my experience, then you're better off leaving that relationship, because it's always going to cause you problems and it's going to annoy you, which means that you're not going to be happy. And if you're not happy, what's the point of staying? The third thing that is really, really important to remember about requirements is that they are subjective, which means that they need to be met according to your standards. So if respect means something to you, you decide what it feels like to be respected. If for you respect means don't ignore my messages, reply to them when I send you something because I need to talk to you, Don't leave me on red for days. Be there when you say you're going to be there. All of these are sign of respect by your definition. Then you have to communicate them, and they have to be met. If they're not met, that means you're not getting your ideal relationship, and that's a clear sign that you should be walking out. And these are the red flags that you're going to notice from the very beginning of the relationship, and they are the ones that tell you, I need to leave, I need to get out of here. And also what makes requirements just as powerful as they are is that, you will know straight away. That's why I said earlier, hell yes or hell no. It's not just a maybe, I'm not sure. If it's a maybe, I'm not sure, that thing that is not present or is being there, or that you're noticing, is actually not a requirement, it's a need, and we're going to get to it in a minute. So remember that requirements are non-negotiable. Is that list of things that are absolutely fundamental to your relationship. They are hell yes or hell no, black or white, met or not met. There's no room for negotiation. It means that every time one of these requirements is not met, you're going to feel unhappy and you're going to want to have a conflict with your partner, which possibly may not be solvable. They are subjective, which means that respect can mean something for me and can mean something completely different for the other person. So you need to be able to explain to the other partner, to define what that means, so that they actually understand how they need to satisfy that requirement, if they can, if they're willing to do it. And they are very, very powerful, which means that if one of them is not there, actually it will ruin the entire relationship. It will actually destroy the cake, because it may still be a relationship, it may still be some sort of cake, but it won't be the one that you want. And therefore it means that you're compromising, you're settling for less than what you want, and that's not what queens do. Am I right, ladies? Okay, so then these are some common requirements, just to give you some ideas. If you're like maybe taking a pen and paper right now and starting to think about some of the requirements that you want to have in a relationship, that will help you determine if the guy you're dating, or the guy you're thinking of, the guy you have a connection with, or the girl that you're having a connection with, it's not really binary in that way, is actually meeting these requirements. So for example, if you expect your partner to be reliable, responsible, if you expect your partner to be faithful, if you expect your partner to be truthful and honest with you, to not be jealous. So these are some deal breakers. I put them here as requirements, but they are actually all phrased in the negative on this list. So if you see that someone, they're more like red flags. They're like, in this particular visual that you have here, they're more shown as red flags. So if someone is complacent and doesn't value your opinions or goals, if someone is not faithful, if they made a commitment to you, if someone is jealous, if someone is trying to control you, all of these things are signs that your basic requirements are not met. So try to make a list of all these things in the positive, though. What are the things that you actually want from a relationship, which you will learn by the end of this webinar, and see how that goes. The second part of this section of the happiness recipe is identifying your needs. Why is it important that you know what your needs are? Because essentially all conflicts, all disagreements in a relationship are coming from the fact that certain needs are not met. So when all our needs are met, when all our needs and all our requirements are met, we have absolute balance, full alignment, and perfect relationships. There's no conflict. Now, of course, it's unrealistic to imagine that you will ever be in a relationship where there won't be any conflict. But just because you have conflict, it doesn't mean that the relationship is wrong, that your partner is not good enough, that you're not good enough. It actually means that you need to find clarity around what your needs are, and to be able to express that need to your partner and find a win-win solution. Which means that if there's something missing for you, you communicate that to your partner. Your partner is asking you, how can I support you? How can I help you meet this need? And then life will be good. So the things that are important to remember about needs is that, like I said, they are issues that appear in the relationship, but they are negotiable. Remember the preparation slide that I showed you for the cake? It means that they can actually be the cake can be baked in many different ways. There are many different tools that you can that you can use to create that perfect relationship. So by negotiating around the unmet needs, you are able to create a new version of the future, a new relationship. So it doesn't mean that because a need is not met right now, there's no way that you can continue with that relationship. So remember that there is a very distinctive difference between needs and requirements, and I'm going to show you what that is. And the key thing is requirements are non-negotiable. There is no way you negotiate respect, fidelity, marriage, commitment, but needs are negotiable. There are many different ways of satisfying them, and I'm going to give you some examples in a minute of some needs that you could have. You will understand a little bit more what I mean. What I mean. What I think it's really, really important for you to understand is that in order to have your needs met in a relationship, you require to learn conflict resolution skills. And this is something that we're eminently bad at because nobody's actually teaching us how to do it. So conflict resolution skills means that you are able to find this way of negotiating, find alternative solutions. Most of the time, we don't resolve conflict and we keep going round in circles around the same unmet need because we are stuck in a certain position, in a certain perspective, and we never really offer each other the alternative of maybe finding a new way that would work. If you're interested in this, I actually do have a webinar, a recording on conflict resolution skills, which you can ask me about, or you can visit in my relationship skills section of my Facebook group, or even on my YouTube channel. I'm not going to go into that for now because it's a whole hour training, so I'm not going to go there. But talking about needs and talking about some examples, there are two types of needs that we have, and I'm only giving you 4 or 5 examples here simply because of the fact that I didn't want to go on for hours about this, but this is a topic that I can talk about for hours. So there's 2 types of needs, functional and emotional needs. So functional needs are those things that make the relationship work on a day-to-day basis. So for example, a very, very common need that people come to me for is like, oh, we don't communicate very well, we need to communicate better. Most people don't really know what that means, and they don't really know that the main aspect of communication is that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, for the simple reason that we should listen twice as much as we actually speak. But most of the time we think that communication means I told you so. A second very, very important functional need that is often an issue in relationships is financial responsibility. So that means that a lot of couples find that they don't agree on the meaning of money, on handling money. They don't have the same vision. Some people might have a scarcity mindset, which means that money is required for survival. Other people might have an abundance mindset, which means, oh, money is always available to me, I don't need to worry about it, which means I can spend without thinking about it. Other things that usually bother people is participation, so the idea of sharing domestic chores, so roles and responsibility within the relationship. Sometimes in some couples we assume the traditional roles of men being the provider, which means they go to work and bring money and bring home the bacon, so to speak, and the woman assumes the role of a homemaker, carer, nurturer, taking care of everybody, raising the children, and so on. Of course, that isn't the only model available, and you and your partner can decide exactly who does what. There's a lot of people who are very, very many fathers, for example, who like to be very involved in the life of their children and be a very hands-on dad, whereas others are completely hands-off. Don't let me, get anywhere near the children because they bore me. Also, things that people are really annoyed about is neatness or cleanliness. One of the things that many people bitch about in their sessions, and I myself I'm really annoyed about, is if my partner is leaving stuff all over the floor, dishes in the sink and so on. For many people, this is really an issue, so it creates a lot of conflicts. It doesn't mean that it's unsolvable, but it means that you actually need to talk about it and figure out how to do it in the best way. Of course, then you have emotional needs like affection, consideration, support, empathy, validation. So a lot of people don't know how to show affection. They don't feel like their partner is showing them enough affection. Other people don't feel supported. don't feel like they're validated by their partner. And actually, the main reason we want to be in a relationship is to be validated, to feel that the other person is there for us. We want someone to have our back, to tell us, you're beautiful, you're nice, you're doing a good job, so that we feel better about ourselves. So all of these, actually, if they're not present, they cause a lot of ongoing conflict. And like I said, it's very important that you learn how to resolve them in a positive way. The final ingredient in the happiness recipe is actually the ones, which is literally the cherry on the cake. Now, of course, we all want everything to be nice and sweet and cute in our life because it makes life better. Ones are definitely those aspects of the relationship that provide pleasure and enjoyment. So these could be mini breaks, staycations, flowers, romance, surprises, gifts, all of these things that are fun and nice to have, but ultimately will not make you decide whether you stay in a relationship or not. Most people don't necessarily want the same thing all the time. So wants are changeable. They come and go. You know, today I may want flowers because I feel like it. Tomorrow I might crave the cake. And once the wants are satiated, which means someone does give you the gift that you want, you can chill for a little bit and you let go of that particular thing, and you don't nag the person all the time if they're not more important than wants. And you can have them substituted, you know, which means that, sure, ideally I would like to be given flowers every week. I mean, not me, but in general, some people. But, you know, if you don't, well, it's not going to be the end of the world, because the cake is still nice and yummy, even without the cherry on top. Okay, so now that we've been through all of these different questions, I hope that you maybe made some notes to yourself. And if you haven't, you can watch the replay and write down all these questions, or of course you can talk to me directly. But essentially, this is a structure, you know, it's a way for you to start thinking about, what does my ideal relationship look like? What are the core ingredients? What are my requirements? What are my needs? What do I need for my relationship to function? What are my emotional needs? How do I feel loved and appreciated in a relationship? And what are some of those nice to haves, the things that would make the relationship cuter and better and more, you know, more satisfying and happier ultimately? So once you have this, your own personal happiness recipe, then we can move to the final part of this presentation today, and to the final part of you getting the relationship that you want, which is creating an action plan. Because change only happens if you become aware of the things that are stopping you. I started with this presentation by asking you, what are those things what are the barriers that you have created for yourself through your own belief systems? Then once you become aware of those barriers and eliminate them, you make a choice. Do I want to continue to believe that I'm never going to find someone because I'm 27 years old or 35, or that I'm never going to be able to have what I want? Or I can change that. I can choose to maybe start dating people who are younger than me. If I think that people who are older than me are not going to like me for some reason, or they're not going to think that I'm young enough, maybe I should just date younger people, because they might actually find a lot of value in dating someone who's more experienced, for example. So now there is this very interesting, very simple model that I would like to introduce to you, which is called the PURE model, which is a set of 4 questions that you can ask yourself to create a very powerful action plan. And I'm going to show you how it's done. So the first one is, ask yourself, what do I want to achieve? And you need to create this, or to answer this question in the positive, which is the P in the PURE model, which means, what do I want to achieve? I want a relationship based on respect. I want to feel supported. I want to feel loved. I want to feel that someone gets me. So all of these things are positive, that I want it, I can imagine them. I can imagine what it feels like for me to feel supported and loved. It's not, you know, a lot of people, when I ask them what they want, they tell me, well, I don't want my partner to be disconnected. I don't want a smoker. I don't want someone who's over 40 years old. I don't want someone who doesn't want children. So to be true to the PURE model, you need to create a goal that is positive. It's something that you can achieve, that is physically something that you can visualize and imagine, and it's actually can be made into reality. So once you get this, what is that you can figure out exactly what is it that you want, you can also ask yourself, what part of it is currently under my control? So if I want to have a positive relationship, a committed relationship with someone, the first step that I can take is maybe to look into ways where I can meet partners that, are more committed, which means maybe I need to go to I don't know, matchmaker, because people who engage a matchmaker tend to be more committed to relationships and don't want to just play the field. If I just want to have a casual relationship for me to kind of learn my relationship skills or something like that, then maybe the first step is to download a dating app where people just date more casually. So whatever it is, make sure that there is at least one part of this action that is entirely under your control. The third one, you need to be able to actually feel the outcome that you have in mind. You need to be able to imagine yourself living the life that you're hoping for. You need to be able to feel loved. Does it feel real? Does it feel possible? Does it feel achievable? Because if it's not real, the law of attraction says you are what you seek. What you believe you achieve. And if you can feel it in the body, if you can feel that love, you can feel the support and the protection and the safety that you're imagining in this ideal relationship, it will become real because your mind will make it happen. So make sure that you have something that is tangible in your mind. That's why I created a tangible, vivid vision of your relationship is one of my core goals with my clients. And the fourth one, the E in the pure model, is the effectiveness of this goal. So what impact will this have in your life? Is it actually going to give you what you want? Is it actually going to make you feel better about yourself? Is it going to give you that sense of achievement? Is it going to make you feel supported and loved and whatever? So if it's impactful, then you will actually know. And then we've come to the final part. So as a quick recap, the Relationship Success Codex is made of a clarity of vision, making sure that you know exactly what I want, that you have clarity on what creates this vision, what makes it possible through a value system that you share with your partner. Then I've talked to you about the recipe for happiness, which is made out of understanding your requirements or deal breakers, clarifying your needs and being able to negotiate around your needs, and knowing that there are some aspects of a relationship that don't actually need to be there, but is nice to have. And then I've given you a very simple model for creating a very powerful, a very actionable plan for how you're going to start to find the love of your life.